Well, let's talk a bit more about Darragh Egan. Actually, I wanted to look at the sort of tentacles that Tipperary are spreading around the country in terms of coaches. When you think about, so over the weekend, obviously this would have probably stood out to a lot of people that, Willie Maher's involvement with Bennett's Bridge and Dan Shanahan also, but Willie Maher's involved with Bennett's Bridge, and they had that game against Ballyhale. Then we know Liam Cahill, he's with Waterford. Declan Fanning, he's coaching the Piercing. I think he's been there for the last few years, initially brought in by Michael Ryan. We're going to have possibly Willie Maher, who I've mentioned, as the Tipperary manager, or Brendan Cummins. It's down to the two of them in terms of the information I have anyway. Then also Darren Gleeson is with Antrim. So there is that sort of, the tentacles are sort of spreading. Like a while back I was thinking we're going to end up with Kilkenny coaches everywhere. We might yet, because we still don't know how it'll pan out. But there is that sort of spread of Tip now.
No, there definitely is. As much as I hate to say it, there's Tip blood all over the country, in fairness to them.
Hard baited.
Listen, you have Michael Fennelly in Offaly, and you have David Herity in Kildare, and you have obviously Brian Cody in Kilkenny, but Tip have surpassed them already. And it's interesting to see that what would have been viewed as a lot of realistic candidates for the Tip job being elsewhere. Darragh Egan would have been seen as a realistic candidate to the Tip job. Darren Gleeson would have been as well. And obviously we've plenty of other names, as you mentioned there. But it is just interesting to see that. And a lot of them, again, Liam Cahill, of course. A lot of them Cahill's definitely not serving an apprenticeship, but there's other guys there that are definitely serving an apprenticeship of sorts with a bigger picture in mind. That's not to say, people take that the wrong way. People say that that's disrespectful to the counties involved. It's not. You're going learning their craft, and those counties are generally very lucky to have those guys that are going serving their craft and putting their foundations down in other counties, and they generally do great jobs. But it's just Darragh Egan in Wexford is going to be really, really interesting, because it's just a bit of an unknown for him going into management. But I actually checked it. I just checked it out even before he was announced, just to see how far it would be from Puck on to Wexford. It's not a million miles away, just over 2 hours. Be interesting to see what style of play he brings to the table there. As I said, he would be a very innovative coach. I think he was training the Tip under 16s when he was first called into the Tip senior panel. He's been involved in coaching for so long, and it's just going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table there. How will he merge what Davy has done, and how will he put his own spin on things? Will they go with this? Will they go with the de facto sweeper they've been playing under Davy, or will he change it up a bit? That's going to be a really intriguing prospect over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and maybe to be a little bit of both. I think Tipperary hurling generally tries to play with some man sort of filling the square, at least two men filling the square. And that was maybe the drawback of Wexford last year, that at times you looked up the field and you're like, there's actually nobody within 40 yards of the opposition goal. The other thing is, we'll probably just talk a little bit more about Darragh Egan. You've kind of mentioned a bit some of the clubs that he's gone and done coaching with the last few years. He was involved with Tommy Larkins. He's definitely done some coaching with Scariff down in Clare. We're going to talk about Scariff a little bit later on. So he's definitely been around a little bit, which is no harm too. And this would be just putting my Tipperary hat on for a minute. You want to see that, sometimes when you're looking at who'll be the next Tipperary manager, you're like, who are the people here that have the top level intercounty experience? And you're like, oh, there's not that many around. But now in a couple of years' time, so obviously it looks like Willie Maher or Brendan Cummins will get the job now. And then, they'll do their tenure, whether it's 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it might be. And at that point, then you'd be like, okay, well, next in line, Darragh Egan, how did he go at Wexford? Liam Cahill, assuming that relations can be repaired, how did he go at Waterford? Darren Gleeson, how did he go? And, so on and so forth. And I think that's a good position for a county that doesn't appoint outside managers, because you kind of have yourself very much snookered otherwise, don't you?
Yeah, you have a load of stock waiting to fill whenever the next vacancy is. And if you looked at it a couple of years ago, you would have thought Liam Cahill in 2018, you would have thought, okay, hasn't taken a senior team. Willie Maher hasn't taken, a senior county team. I can't even remember who else was in the mix, but those two would have been the leading candidates. Now, whenever the next Tip vacancy comes up, you're going to say, well, Liam Cahill has an extensive spell with Waterford under his belt. Darragh Egan has 3 years with Tip, and he's going to have however many years at Wexford. Darren Gleeson will have minimum of 3 years done with Antrim. So they won't be short of options next time around anyway, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and a couple of great comments in here. Kevin O'Donoghue says, lads, with Tipp, Wexford and Galway getting new management, can you see them being irrelevant in terms of contending for the next few years until they find their footing? Well, if you look at Liam Cahill, in his first year, he got Waterford to a Munster final, pushed Waterford or Limerick closer than anyone did, and then got them to an All-Ireland final. So, but that then you probably have to drill into this a little bit deeper and ask yourself, right, Watford, they'd had a couple of seasons where it didn't happen for them, but you knew the players were there. Do Tipperary, Wexford and Galway have a certain amount of established players with talent already there and a couple more that just need to be honed into top-level stars?
Yeah, no, I would think so. Like, they're not like.
Would you say that with all three of them? That they all could contend with the right man next year?
I definitely say that around Galway. What have Galway won? 5 of the last 7 minors. Like, so there's clearly plenty of talent there. Maybe they didn't train on at under 20 level as they would like. Tipp have won under 20 and under 21 All-Irelands in recent years. There's obviously plenty of talent there. There's plenty of really good older stock there as well. I'd say Wexford is the one kind of outlier maybe in that regard. They haven't exactly had a ton of underage success, apart from the Leinster minor that they won the same day as the seniors won the senior All-Ireland in 2019. They haven't had probably much success other than that. They were given an awful beating by Tipp in an All-Ireland under 20 semi-final a couple of years ago as well, under Liam Cahill. Did Tipp put up a wicked amount of goals, either 6 or 8 goals, I think, the same day. So they're probably the one that you'd leave out of that equation. But like, as regards Tipp and Galway, like, I was up in Tyrone last week and we were asking Brian Dewar, the joint manager with Tyrone, about the bounce factor. Like, they're first year in after Mickey Hart's reign and they're already in an All-Ireland final. Mickey Hart's first year in 2003, that was his first year as well. So it's definitely not beyond the realms of possibility. Things can be turned around really, really quickly when the right personnel are at the helm and everybody buys into it. I'm a firm believer in that. Like, look at what's going on in Offaly. How, like, could anyone have foreseen that things would turn around as quickly as that in all codes? No way. But all of a sudden, the right personnel are there. And now, since April, we've had Shane Lowry making financial contributions, loads of other people coming in on board. The hurlers promoted to Division 1, hurlers winning Christy Ring, under 20 All-Ireland success. The footballers getting promoted to Division 2. And now we have Tomas O'Shea involved with the seniors for next year. You just couldn't have seen any of those things happening. So I would particularly say with Tipp and Galway, it's definitely not beyond the realms of it's not beyond the realms of possibility for either of them to win the All-Ireland next year. It's not if they're going that well. Galway maybe less so without Canning. But like, could you see Tipp win the All-Ireland next year? You could. I hope they don't, but you could see it happening.
Yeah, but even like I'm sure we've seen situations where a star player retires and then the team goes on and wins an All-Ireland the following year or the year after that again. You wouldn't have thought that Tipperary maybe would win an All-Ireland so soon after Lara Corbett retired. I think it was like he played in 2015 and they won it then in 2016, but maybe expectations weren't quite there. Gooch Cooper got injured in the 2014 season. Kerry would go on and win the All-Ireland. I'm pretty confident that Mayo will beat Tyrone this weekend, even though Cillian O'Connor is out for the season. So,
fair point, yeah.
Yeah, I think that other lads probably, sometimes you nearly need a star player to not be there anymore for other lads to step up. And I wonder, like, with Galway, would Jason Flynn kick on to that next level? Like, he's shown great flashes over the years and then hasn't really franked the form enough. Could he kick on next year if he's given a sort of a central role? Maybe not, but it's worth seeing. Flash says here, Chin and McDonald will be rejuvenated under Egan. They win Leinster and they're 2 wins away from an All-Ireland title. Obviously, Limerick would be standing in their way. They'd be standing in everyone's way. I think anyone's route to an All-Ireland title is through Limerick next year. But, like, rejuvenated. I mean, I'm actually interested to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, when Davy Fitz was doing his game plan, he would have been putting Chin and McDonald central to it and talking to these lads and say, we're going to get the ball in your hand, and telling people we need to get the ball into these lads' hands. So I don't know if it's about rejuvenating them more so than rejuvenating the rest of them and making sure that everyone's got a role where they're really impacting the game and maybe getting more out of Jack O'Connor and a couple of more guys like that.
I would have thought it's the lesser lights, and particularly it's the guys probably from number 20 to number 30. They have to know that they're going to get chances now. They have to know. And I think realistically, barring 1 or 2, you could have named the Wexford team for the last 4 or 5 years, realistically. And it was one of these things that was, harder to get off the team than to get, you couldn't. It's very hard to get off the team. Generally, I would have said, even if guys were out of form. Whereas a lot of those young guys, the likes of, let's say, Conor Hearn, who came in last year, Mikey O'Neill, these sort of lads, they're all going to get a really, really sustained run, I'd imagine, under Darragh Egan. And a lot of, it's just, the net will be spread an awful lot wider, and I'm sure he will maybe, different managers have different preferences. Davy might have looked at a guy and maybe not fancied him at county level. Egan might look at the same guy and think, yeah, he can offer me something. So the door is definitely open for everyone again. Big thing with Wexford is that, like, you're not talking about anybody retiring, realistically. Like, there's nobody going out the door, and if they can get Paddy Foley back in the door, I think, they're going to be, they'll be there or thereabouts in Leinster again if everything is going the one direction.
Could you see Anthony Daly back in inter-county management soon? I see his name there mentioned in a comment.
Yeah, it's mentioned regularly, but I don't know his circumstances. His name is mentioned regularly, but he hasn't appeared anywhere in a while. I put it that way.
Yeah, a comment here from Mark Corcoran. It's true. There are a mix of different county men in all setups. Has always been that way. Might not be the main manager, but a lot of the managers, coaches did their time elsewhere. Yeah, that's true. So we kind of already mentioned that Micheál Donoghue, that he was involved in the Tipperary setup a few years ago under Eamon O'Shea, and went back to Galway after that. Pádraig Gill says, RE Tipp management. Any other relatively recently retired players involved in coaching that can get involved in intercounty? Thinking of the likes of Lar or Owen Kelly. What a lift they give. Owen Kelly, who has been involved under Liam Sheedy for the past couple of years. So that box is probably already ticked there. And there probably are a few more that would be. I mean, Tipperary have certainly been looking at delving into the former players. I mean, James Woodlock's been involved with the minors. John Devan has also been. The Shelmanator, Cahill would want to win the Derby, Gold Cup, Champions League and WWE with Watford to get a sniff of the Tipp job again, in my humble opinion. So obviously the suggestion there that not all would be well in Tipperary in terms of him being approached again. Lee Chin's potential will be fully realised under Egan. And could we see how good Davy was next year? Clare haven't won a trophy since he left, and Watford haven't won Munster either. That is true. I mean, at times it comes across almost as if you're being somewhat wary of him, or you're sort of somewhat suggesting there's a negative undertone with him. But, there's the truth to it too, that he does kind of win things. So that has to be mentioned. Mark Corcoran, Egan will have them playing an attacking brand of hurling, obviously reference in Wexford. Enjoyable, forward-friendly hurling. Lee Chin won't be covering a number of positions out deep. And one thing, if you were to talk about how Kiladangan hurl, so I'm not saying that, Brian Lawler might be, central to how Kiladangan would have played in the last couple of years. But with Egan maybe involved more so in the background. And, you were there at the county final last year, and Egan was involved in the sideline with Kiladangan. He's playing for the B team in goals these days. But what sort of hurling do Kiladangan play, as far as you're concerned? I have my own thoughts on it. And, do you think that they'll be applying that to Wexford?
I wouldn't say it's all out attack or anything like that. They would, try and keep the thing secure defensively, but they do generally put up massive scores. They've got a lot of really mobile players. Do you know what? When you say it there, Kiladangan and Wexford are probably very similar profile-wise, I would say. They're all generally really mobile players. They've got lots of lads that can chip in, but maybe not, would say, really, really star men. That's not doing any disrespect to the likes of Billy Seymour or anybody else up front in particular. But they do have a lot of lads that could chip in. Wexford are probably something similar. If you go back through what Kiladangan scored last year in the championship, like I think they scored 223 to beat Lockmore recently. They obviously put up a crazy score in extra time to beat Lockmore in the county final last year, and had put up big scores in the semi-final, quarter-final, even in the group stages last year. So it's not an all-out attack or anything like that, but they do put up big scores. You've probably seen an awful lot more of them. I remember playing against Kiladangan with Burr, and they were hungry for goals. They were always moving around an awful lot in attack. There was a lot of different things going on. Darragh Egan leading that on the field, I would say, when he was on the pitch, and leading that on the sideline as well, with the way they had probably been coached the whole way up. I think he's principal in Puckane National School, isn't he? So he's fairly looking after the next generation there, and he's definitely has been one of the most important people in that club in the growth of it over the last 20 plus years, I'd say.
If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/OurGame.